Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. On this episode, we have a fan favorite Blackhawk player getting traded. The Cubs and Sox reversing roles, and the Bulls making their NBA draft pick. All this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. But first, as always, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with them, Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean? That means you get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable pricing. Located just 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. Make sure you get your tickets ready for the season debut in October. It's coming up quickly. Check them out, icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right. So on this episode, like I teased on a little bit, we are going to talk Blackhawks first. Then we're going to talk a little bit of Bulls. Then we're going to wrap it up with baseball. So let's just jump right in. The Blackhawks, in a desperate need of making some salary cap relief. As we talked about in the last episode, is they made the trade, trading Brian Bickle, who we knew they had to go, and we're all expecting it. But then they traded Teuvo Teravainen. That one was a little bit of a shocker, is because he's a really talented player. He hasn't really even fully developed into the player he's going to be. We had him under contract. I guess you still got to get rid of some salary cap, and you're going to have to package somebody in order to get rid of Brian Bickle's contract. And we talked about this ad nauseum, I think, last week. But part of us being able to swallow the Teuvo Teravainen trade was, well, at least we'll get to re-sign Andrew Shaw. That was the thinking there. Get rid of Teuvo and Bickle, and you'll be able to afford Shaw. And lo and behold, is we trade Teuvo, we trade Bickle, and then we turn around and trade Shaw. Not even under contract. He's a restricted free agent. The Blackhawks turn around and flip him to Montreal for 2 second-round picks. And I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for it, I think I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, I think it's the right move. We love Andrew Shaw. We love the heart he has and what he's brought to this team and the fire, all these things. But realistically, is he worth the money that you would have had to pay to re-sign him? Is he? Or is this going to be another Brian Bickle type contract? I don't know. I think that at this point, with the limited cap space you have, the fact that what you're going to have to pay him and what you're going to get, and the fact that you have no draft picks, or very few, is you turn around and you don't have the guy under contract, and you turn around and flip him to Montreal for 2 draft picks, plus they have to worry about re-signing him. I think this is a good deal. I think this is what's going to make sense for the Blackhawks. And in turn, they were able to do this and get draft picks for this year in this NHL draft. So we're going to talk quickly about the 3 top players that the Blackhawks got. And that's their 3 second-round picks. So they had 3 second-round picks in this NHL draft, which just happened several days ago. And with their first second-round pick, they they signed an undersized 18-year-old sniper by the name of Alexander Debrincat. The Debrincat. He, like I said, 18 years old. He's from Michigan, so he's a fairly local kid, American kid, undersized sniper. He's basically one of the best pure scorers in this NHL draft. But the knock on him is he's 5'7", 163 pounds. That's not a big man by any stretch of the imagination, and it's going to be tough for a guy like him to really play at his peak in the NHL, being that size. I mean, I know there's guys like Kane that are able to do it, but this is definitely not a Kane situation. He's going to have to make sure that he works and really plays well in the NHL or in minors to be able to come up and be a contributor in the NHL. The second of the second round picks is Chad Chris. He is a puck-moving defenseman. Had a little bit of a down year this year, but they have him here. He's going to be heading to college. So the Blackhawks are going to own his rights, but he's going to be heading to college, and he's going to be going to Boston University. So this is going to be a guy that the situation is going to be that they're going to have a specific amount of time once he decides to leave college to be able to re-sign him, or else they lose him and he goes into free agency. So it's going to be, after some of the past situations that the Blackhawks have had, this is going to be a situation where they're going to work really hard to sign him, especially if he plays really well at BU. And then the third of the second round picks is Artur Kayumov. He is a Russian forward, very undersized, kind of like Alexander Debrincat, but he is an elite skater. He is just a top flight skater. He's a really good scorer. So what you're seeing from the Blackhawks is looking at guys with high upside, maybe undersized, maybe have some production that went down, maybe whatever the case may be, is they're looking at guys that have high upside that they can hit a home run on. These are the guys that they're going to have a high fail rate, but they're going to, when they do hit, you're going to be like, oh my God, how did the Blackhawks get this guy in the second round? Those are the types of guys they're looking at, because this is really, realistically, they didn't have a first round pick. So they don't have the option of getting they don't have the option of getting a player that's very safe. Those guys go early and they go quickly. You have to take these guys that you're looking at specific characteristics, specific skills, and high ceiling but high risk associated with them. And that's the kind of guys you're going to get. I'm kind of looking a little bit here, and this is projecting a lot because we haven't had any sort of training camp yet. We haven't even finished making all of the moves that we're going to make. But if you kind of look at it right now, the Blackhawks have about 6 spots that they have left to fill with active players, and they have $6.4 million to do it. So I keep hearing all these rumors and seeing all these rumors of how the Blackhawks are gonna try to get Malkin from the Pittsburgh Penguins. And that guy makes like $9.5 million a year. The Blackhawks would have to, they've got 6.4 right now. So they'd have to find another $3 million just to sign Malkin. Then they would have to find room for another 5 players. So think about that, let's just rough estimate. They sign guys with $750,000 contracts. They need 5 of them. Let's even 4, and they have a light roster. We need another $3 million there. So we're looking at like $6 million that we have to find in order to get Malkin and still fill out our roster, which means you're trading Corey Crawford. Or you're trading Corey Crawford, or you're trading Seabrook, or you're trading Keith, or you're trading... those are the guys you're trading right now. So realistically, this is not happening. That's a rumor. I don't see any way this happens. Malkin's a great player, and it'd be nice to have somebody like him on this team. You put him on that top line, and that's potent, but it's really not going to happen. But like I said, I was sort of just looking at the roster, what they have under contract now, both under NHL contracts and two-way contracts, and they're young players. And here's how I see the potentially, without any sort of other moves going on, the lines for the Blackhawks and how they're going to fill out this roster. And I'm anticipating that top line to be the Taves line, to be Taves, Hossa, and Richard Panik. That's the way I sort of see it playing out right now. The second line is going to be the same second line as we had last year, where you have Panarin, Anisimov, and Kane. The third line, this one's going to be an interesting one with Tyler Mott, Dennis Rasmussen, and Nick Schmaltz. And then that fourth line, that's the one I see is Ryan Hartman, Desjardins, and Marcus Kruger. And probably like Kyle Baun up there to fill out the roster. When your defensive pairings, Keith and Seabrook being your top pair, Hjalmarsson and TVR being your second pair, and Gustafsson and Kempny being that third pair, with Victor Svedberg being that seventh defenseman. Now, it's possible you bring up David Rundblad again, but I just really don't see that. David Rundblad. But if you were able to do this, the roster I just proposed, you'd be able to fill out your roster, and you'd still have about $2.3 million in cap space left to spend. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. As you fill this out, you got 2.3 left to spend, and that means you could make a move at the trade deadline and still have, be able to be comfortable a little bit. That's a lot of cushion to have if you're the Blackhawks, especially considering the cap problems you have, is to be able to fill out your roster and still have $2.5 million left, roughly. That's a positive. You have to be able to take that as a win. Not enough to bring in a Malkin and put him on your team, but it's enough to be able to bring in somebody, some defensive help, maybe another forward, etc. come trade deadline. Now I just want to move on to the Chicago Bulls. I didn't want to talk too much about the Blackhawks. We mentioned Shaw, and I wish him well in Montreal, but I just think that with the rumor I'm hearing is he wanted over $4 million a year, and you're going to end up basically with another Bickle contract that's going to hamstring you and make it tough, and you're we'll see where you go from there. Wait. There's one more thing I wanted to mention is I heard a rumor about Brian Campbell interested in coming back to the Blackhawks. Now that would be a great one because he was a good player for the Blackhawks and he fit really well in what they were trying to do. It just he was given a stupid high contract, and it really stung the Blackhawks and what they were trying to do with their team and being able to afford people. If they're able to re-sign him at a reasonable contract, it would be great to have Campbell back because that would really stabilize what the Blackhawks are doing on defense. You won't have to rely on more young players. You could really split that up and have much more comfort in your pairing because you're going to bring in a veteran. You're going to bring in a veteran that can score, and you're going to bring in a veteran that's played for this system and this coach. I like that move if he's willing to take a big pay cut from what he's making to try to come to a championship team. So we'll see what happens there. Let's move on to the Bulls. And we had the NBA draft that just happened as well. So the NBA and NHL drafts just happened. And Derrick Rose traded to the New York Knickerbockers. I want to repeat that. So if you were not paying attention to the news over the past week or so, Derrick Rose traded to the New York Knicks. And it was a package deal. Derrick Rose with Justin Holiday and a 2017 second-round pick all going to New York And in return, the Bulls get Robin Lopez, Jose Calderon, and Jaren Grant. Now, I've heard so many different opinions on this trade and on Derrick Rose, etc., etc. And I'm going to give you mine. Another stupid jerk opinion, and that's fine. For all of those that are mad at the Bulls for doing this and that think that Derrick Rose is going to prove Bulls management wrong and that this is going to be, he's going to rise to the occasion and he's going to be awesome in New York, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I think you're kind of delusional. Derrick Rose, there was a period of 3 or 4 years when Derrick Rose came into this league that he was a superstar. He was awesome. He won an MVP. But then he blew his knees out. All those injuries, not only did they affect him physically and the way he plays basketball and what he's able to do on the floor, it really affected him mentally. He has never been the same. He was a great basketball player, but he was not a mentally strong guy. If you look at a guy like Adrian Peterson from the Minnesota Vikings, that guy tore his ACL. He said, all right, I'm going to work twice as hard as I did before, and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And he came back in 6 months? It was and almost broke the single season rushing record. He was absolutely amazing. That's the kind of mindset that you need to be able to come back from this. Now, I can't be mad at the guy for not having that type of mindset because it's really hard. I know for a fact. Think about when you go to the gym or when you go do this, that, or the other. Something that's a hard thing to do. Are you able to put every single ounce of blood, sweat, and tears into it all times? Or do you try and then say, oh, I did my best, and then kind of give up? That's what most people do. Derrick Rose is kind of doing that. He's saying, I'm comfortable enough with the effort I'm putting forward, and this is what I'm doing. And that's all he's going to give. He's not going to put in that effort to get to that next level, to get back to where he was. He's not mentally strong enough to be able to overcome the mental side of those injuries. The guy, you can't take anything away from what he did early in his career for the league and for the Chicago Bulls and for the city of Chicago in general. But once he got those injuries, he was a different guy, and the dynamic quickly changed. If you think about this, is over the past, I think, 4 years, he's played 127 games, and he's missed 201. You can't do that. That's not productive. And if you think that he's going to go to New York and he's just going to shoot the lights out and just light it up, the guy's not going to do that. And the New York people think, oh, the Chicago media is so against Derrick Rose. Wait till you see the New York media. They are vicious. They are absolutely vicious animals. And the minute Derrick sits out a game with general soreness, they are going to eat him up. This is a city that if you don't win a championship, you're a loser. They don't want any part of you, and they are fair weather fans, and it's fair weather media. If you're not tops, you're last. And Derrick is going to get eaten up in that market. I hate to say it. He can have Reggie Rose all day long trying to shield him, telling him these great lines. Same thing with B.J. Armstrong. But the fact is, he has to come in, night out, and be able to play. And the Knicks are going to... The one Knick player that I feel really sorry for, because I think this is going to hurt his development, is Porzingis. You have Carmelo Anthony, who's Carmelo Anthony. He needs to score. He needs to have the ball. You have Derrick Rose, who's a turnover machine. He needs the ball. And Porzingis is going to be the best player on that floor, and he's not going to be able to get the ball enough to really show his dominance. I'm going to miss Justin Holiday. Is he a superstar? Oh, no, not at all. But did he play with a lot of heart and really try to give his best effort and put forth what Fred Hoiberg is trying to do with this offense? Absolutely. He's the guy that came in and is trying to run the offense the way that Hoiberg wants to do it, and he is the embodiment of that. And then you give up a second-round pick next year. Blech, I don't care. Second-round picks in the NBA, sure, you'll come out with a few names here and there, like Manu Ginobili, who were second-rounders. But really, second-rounders in the NBA most likely suck. Very few of them that turn out to be awesome. Now, let's take a look at what the Bulls got back from the Knicks for this trade. They get... Oh, and mind you, Derrick Rose's contract expires at the end of the year. End of the year, he's a free agent. You get, if you're the Bulls, Robin Lopez. He's a 7-foot center, 28 years old, and this year he's going to make a little over $12.5 million. He's got 3 years left on his deal as well. You get, he was a 80% free throw shooter, 10 points a game, 7 rebounds, 1.6 blocks. You get Jose Calderon. He is a 6'3", 34-year-old, and he was 7.6 points per game player and a 4.6 assist per game player. He's a guy that has played very well in this league for a number of years. He's on his last legs. He's an older guy, but he's gonna, at the end of the year, he's gone. So that's going to be his $7.7 million off the books. And then you get Jaren Grant. Jaren Grant, you may recognize the name, first of all, because he is the nephew of former Chicago Bull Horace Grant and the son of Harvey Grant, Horace's brother, who played for in the NBA as well. Now, you also may remember him because last year in the draft, he was a guy that the Bulls really wanted to get. They liked him a lot. He ended up getting picked a couple picks before them. And so that's a player they really identified with. And were his numbers stellar last year? No, but he was also a rookie point guard coming into this league. That's kind of to be expected. He's not coming in as a number 1, number 2 overall pick. He came in, was it the 20th pick, the 19th pick? And point guard at that level, sure, there's going to be a little bit of growing pains. But if you looked at the end of the season when he got more playing time, his production went up. I think playing in Fred Hoiberg's offense is going to make him play better. He's much, much, much younger than Derrick Rose, plays the same position, he's bigger, and he got him under a really team-friendly contract for 4 years. I asked myself, who's the winner in this draft? It's hard to say. I've heard in the NBA, they say whoever got the best player wins the deal. And people keep saying, well, Derrick Rose is the best player. Is he? I don't know if there's really a best player in this. Robin Lopez is going to be able to step in and be your starting center now that Paul Gasol is going to be gone. He's under, and when this year is over, Derrick Rose is going to be a free agent. You wouldn't have signed him anyway. So you're going to, and Robin Lopez makes a lot less money than Derrick did. So you're going to get $20-some million in cap space, but then you're sitting on another $12.5 million for Robin Lopez's contract, another couple of million for Jaren Grant. So all in all, you're going to get some cap relief at the end of the season, but not the full amount of Derrick Rose's contract. I get other people that are saying, well, you should have been able to get more for Derrick Rose. Who are you going to get? In this league, you need two teams to be able to make a trade at least. You need 2 to tango. So you can say, oh, well, they should have got a first-round pick. What team was going to give that to him? You can think that all you want, but if the other teams in the league don't agree with that of your opinion of Derrick Rose, they're clearly not going to give that kind of a player up or draft pick up, especially when he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He is an unknown. Like I said before, he's played in way less games than he's missed over the last 4 years. Way less. Like a whole season of games less. And he's going to be a free agent, so you get 1 year of his contract. He makes a ton of money. And he was statistically an average point guard last year. Statistically, he was the average point guard in the league. So who's going to give up all this for him? He has the potential to come out and just play lights out, but he hasn't done that in years and years and years. He's not getting any younger. His knees aren't getting any better. He's not turning the ball over any less. I don't know what you really thought you were going to get for him. Now, is Robin Lopez, Jose Calderon, and Jaren Grant, does that end all lights out players? No. But really, realistically, what you're doing is you're just turning over the roster, seeing who can play in this system. If Robin Lopez can't play, you can move a Robin Lopez with that contract, especially considering that there's rumors that Joakim Noah is going to get $28 million a year. $28 million a year. Is he more than double as good as Robin Lopez? Because he's going to be getting more than double the amount of money. I don't know. And Robin Lopez, for that kind of contract, a starting center, under 30 years old, with $12.5 million a year contract, turns out he can't, if he's not good, you can move that and get some compensation for it. Jose Calderon, he'll be free agent at the end of the year. And Jaren Grant, you can live with him. You can work with him because he's young. I think the deal is pretty good. It's turning over the roster. And then on top of that there's rumors of Jimmy Butler being shopped during draft night. And they just didn't like the deal they were going to get. Minnesota apparently offered the number 5 overall pick plus Zach LaVine. And there's no way I would take that. I think that's pantsing the Bulls. I can't see them taking that. But the stupid thing about it is this is such a Gar-Pax type move is rather than just say to Jimmy, hey, Jimmy, we're just putting you out there to see what we can get. If some team wants to way overpay for you, we just want to let you know we'll take it. But if teams aren't going to way overpay for you, then of course we're going to keep you. You're our best player. Now, what would be overpaying? I would say the number 5 overall pick and Andrew Wiggins. That would be a very good deal. Even better deal would be trading next year's number 1, which is the Nets number 1 pick owned by Minnesota, trading that plus Andrew Wiggins for Butler. Now that would be a great trade for the Bulls. You would take that one. But Zach LaVine in the number 5 this year? Nope, sorry. That is not going to work. But they didn't do that with Butler. They didn't give him that heads up. They didn't treat him like their franchise player. And they floated rumors out there. And then he had to go and confront the team, which they lied about after that. And said, oh, we haven't talked to him, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And on top of that is they traded Derek. And Derek, they never even talked to him on the phone. They called him, they left messages, and he didn't answer. This is such a dysfunctional team. But I just want to quickly talk about their draft picks. They had 2 draft picks in this draft. And the first one was the 14th overall pick. And out of Michigan State, the Bulls took Denzel Valentine. He's a 2/3 player. Shooting guard, shooting forward, 6'5", 210 pounds. Now, when they drafted him, Gar and Pax said that they wanted to get younger and more athletic. He's definitely younger. Denzel Washington is definitely younger. More athletic, I don't know about that. He was the AP National Player of the Year last year, so he's a good basketball player, but he's got some knee issues. He's a bit slow, a little bit unathletic, but he's got basketball smarts. He's a leader. He's a do-it-all type guy. He's done great things at the college level as far as a team and individual performance, and he's just going to come in and not have to relearn the game. He's a polished player. He's not a project. He's going to step in and be what he's going to be. And I think the Bulls thought that was a very safe pick. And I think it's a very good pick, barring any sort of injury type things. But what they didn't get is a guy with a super high ceiling. They got a guy who's safe. And then with the second round, they got Paul Zipser. He, again, is a 2/3 shooting guard, shooting forward. But he's 6'8", 210 pounds. So few inches taller than Denzel Valentine. He is out of Germany, and he played the last 4 years with Bayern Munich of the German BBL. And now he's a guy that is more of a project, but I hear some high upside for him. He was the best player over in that league, and he's a guy that does have a high ceiling, but it's going to be a high risk as well. So it's a balancing act here. The Bulls took one really safe pick and one really out there kind of high ceiling, high risk type guy. Now, I can't be mad at this. I think this was a very good draft. But then again, I thought the Bobby Portis draft was good, and I thought the Doug McDermott draft was good. And on paper, they are. Maybe they could be if this was another regime that was in there. And maybe it's just the Garpax / Fred Hoiberg regime is just runs players in the ground. But I don't know. I still think this is a good draft pick, especially considering where he drafted and how weak of a draft this was. So yeah, we shall wait and see. But I'm excited to see Denzel Washington, and I'm excited to see Jaren Grant and Robin Lopez in here. I think you're really starting to fill out this roster with younger players, and we'll see what we got. We're gonna have a lot of money to spend. Maybe we can entice one free agent to come in. And then finally, I'm gonna wrap it up with. Last week I was supposed to. I promised that I was going to go through the Cubs and the White Sox draft picks, and I didn't. So I'm going to quickly talk about the Cubs and the White Sox and wrap this show up for this week. I'm going to start with the Cubs, who are. It's like the Cubs and the White Sox are flip-flopping their roles in this city. One team is fire lit under them and is playing well, and the other one is just playing uninspired, lackadaisical baseball. And the Cubs, let's talk about their draft first. When they had the draft, that was earlier this month, they didn't have a pick in the first 2 rounds. They gave up picks for signing John Lackey and Jason Hayward. But they had a 3rd round, a 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, etc. So we're not going to go through all of them because realistically, if you look at Major League Baseball, and you look at your players that you drafted in these later rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, etc., the odds of those guys making it to the professional levels and being a contributor on your team are really slim. They're really slim. And baseball is so hard to project who's going to be good from the high school level to the pro level, and a little bit easier from the college level to the pro level. But still, it's not a very good ratio of conversion. So we'll just talk briefly about the Cubs draft picks. And in 3rd round, they picked Thomas Hatch, pitcher. 4th round, Tyson Miller, pitcher. 5th round, Bailey Clark, pitcher. 6th round, Chad Hocken, pitcher. Notice the pattern there. Pitcher, 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 pitcher. All those pitchers before they drafted a position player. It doesn't matter if we talk about them and what their skill levels are, etc. when they're this far down. So many players were drafted ahead of them. They may be good players, they may not. I'm not going to talk about their scouting. You can Google that. But what I want to talk about is the approach that the Cubs take when they do the draft. Now, if we look at the last, or Theo picks with the Cubs, these are These are his last 3 first overall picks. So this year Thomas Hatch would be the Cubs' first pick, but he was a 3rd rounder. So if you look the last 3 picks, first overall pick for the Cubs that in the Jed and Theo era, it's Albert Almora, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty darn impressive. I like what they do there. This is a really good talent evaluation group. And just look at the success they've had in this short amount of time with the guys they brought over. And I'm going to talk about prior to Jed and Theo. I'm going to go through some of the draft picks and just to show you the stark contrast in the player ability that you got. So like I said, is Albert Almora, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber are your previous top picks for Jed and Theo, all at the major league level. Prior to Jed and Theo, in 2010, the Cubs' first overall pick was Hayden Simpson. 2009, Brett Jackson. 2008, Andrew Kashner. 2007, Josh Vitters. 2006, Tyler Colvin. 2005, Mark Powlek. 2004, Grant Johnson. 2003, Ryan Harvey. 2002, Luke Haggerty. It wasn't until 2001, Mark Pryor, that you had a guy that lasted in the league. Are any of these players in the later rounds going to be hits for the Cubs? I don't know. I really don't. But they've made the conscious effort to say, hey, we've got a lot of position players, and the trades for young arms aren't as readily available as we thought. We're going to have to develop pitching. And they went out and said, all right, we're going pitching heavy. And there have been a lot of guys. I mean, you think about how many guys you draft, 19, 20 guys in a draft, and maybe 1 or 2 makes it through to your ranks of the major leagues and does anything, let alone be a superstar, is pretty astronomical. So the likelihood, most of these pitchers are going to bottom out and have their cup of coffee and then go on to do whatever in their life, sell insurance, ring up groceries, whatever it is. But I do like the approach that they've taken, and this regime has showed success in being able to draft, to get good players out of the draft at some point or another. So I really trust what they're doing, and it sucks that there's no first or second round pick, but I really think that they're going to be able to pull some sort of magic and get somebody out of this. And at this point now, the Cubs had lost 6 out of 7 games, lost again today, and swept by the Cardinals, and losing 3 out of 4 to the Marlins since we last talked. So 0-3 against the Cardinals and lost 3 of 4 against the Marlins. And it's I'm not going to go through every game, and the sky is not falling. There's no need to panic. This is a really talented team. This is a long, long season. It's 162 games. The Cubs' record was going to fall back down to earth. They weren't going to win 117 games. They're still on pace to win a lot of games. They're really ahead in the standings in their division. That's all that matters. All that matters is they make it. They win the division, so they go to the playoffs without having to play the wild card play-in game, so they can stack their roster and their starting pitching rotation however they want to be able to go on a deep run in the playoffs. That's what they need to do. And it sucks that they're going through this kind of phase in order to level out, but they're leveling out. The field is catching back up to them. They're falling back to the pack, and that's going to happen. This team wasn't going to win the division by 20 games. They're going to, statistically, they're going to win the division. It's just it's a little closer than you want. When you think about the competition and being able to go out there and play hard every day for a reason, you like that better than the alternative is where you run away with it and you get complacent. When you get complacent in baseball, that's when you start losing series to teams that you're not supposed to lose to. We want to talk about some key points for what the Cubs have, where they've gone wrong here. Is Lackey's last start. Gave up 7 runs in 4 1/3. His ERA for the season went from 2.78 to 3.29. You have that game starts off on a bad note where he gets the first guy at the plate gets an infield single to start the game. It's a bad way to start. John Lackey needs to start strong in order to have a strong game. And when you give up an infield hit to 102-year-old Ichiro Suzuki, that's not good for you. Also, you have Rizzo, Montero, Zobrist, all banged up a little bit. They come in and they've been playing, but they're not at 100%. They've got those nagging injuries. And in baseball, those nagging injuries are the ones that really hurt you. If you're football and you have nagging injury, you can take the whole week off and then play Sunday. Sometimes that alleviates it, sometimes it doesn't. Major League Baseball, you play every day. I mean, the Cubs are on, a 24 games in 24 days stretch? You have those type of things, and when you have a sore back, think about what that does to your swing, and then having to go out there every single day and play. Of course, you're not going to have good production. So you need to be able to heal these guys up, and you need to be able to win with the backups. Cubs did bring up some reinforcements with Wilson Contreras, and in his first 8 games in the league, plays 3 different positions. They had him catching, first base, and left field. He's batting .400 with a 1.4 OPS. The kid is not only just crushing the ball as far as baseball. Well, he have 3 home runs, but he's a good fielder. You saw some of the absolutely fantastic plays he made behind the plate. He's a good fielder, and he's a good hitter. But I kind of took some notes on the Cubs' losing streak here, where it's 3 in a row to the Cardinals and 3 of 4 to the Marlins, the lowly Marlins. And some of the take-home messages are the Cubs have been up and down with the number of walks that they're getting. So they're not doing what they did to start the season, which was have long at-bats, work the counts, get on base, get the starter out early of the game and get to the bullpen, and then be able to tack on runs here and there until you've just absolutely opened the floodgates and won the game. And then have strong pitching where your guys are keeping runners off the base, striking people out, not walking people, and doing their part. And in this stretch, you haven't had that. You've been striking out way too much. You're not working the count enough. You're not knocking the starting pitcher out early. The starting pitchers are pitching into the 6th, 7th innings against you. You're not getting to the bullpen. That's the big difference. Saturday, they lost 9-6 to the Marlins. That was a game they scored 6 runs, which is nice. They had 8 walks and only 8 strikeouts, but it was a bad start by Lackey. Friday, they won 5-4. That was a game they only had 4 walks though, and they struck out 11 times, and it was behind a fantastic game by Kyle Hendricks. Other than that grand slam in the first inning, he shut everybody else out. Pitched a heck of a game after that. They lost 4-2 Thursday, and they had only 3 walks and 11 strikeouts as a team. And Lester had a good game, but Strop came in and blew it. You were facing a guy with a 5 ERA for the season, and you couldn't hit him. He came in and shut you down. It's not the way you're supposed to be playing. You look at the Cardinals. You lose 7-2 with Arrieta on the mound. Arrieta gave you a good game. 5 innings pitched, only 1 earned run, but he walked 4 guys and struck out 6. It was the bullpen that blew it for you. Grimm, 4 earned runs in a third of an inning. C.J. Edwards, 1 2/3 inning. He gives up a home run. But then your opposing pitcher, Michael Wacha, he went 6 2/3 and only had 3 hits. 3 hits. The Cubs had 5 walks and 12 strikeouts in the game. So many strikeouts not enough walks. You're not getting guys on base. You're not working the counts enough. And part of that is the Cubs aren't hitting the balls that are in the strike zone. And that's the way opposing pitchers are starting to figure out how to win against the Cubs, is be aggressive, strike them out. Just throw balls, make them hit it. If the Cubs, what they were doing before is teams were so afraid to pitch to the Cubs, they were pitching around them, hoping it would strike out on pitches outside the strike zone. That's what they were doing, is they were being patient, and they were walking on those pitches, getting to first base, either getting another walk or getting a base hit and driving somebody home. And that's the way they were winning these games, and this huge run differential. Right now, the teams are starting to attack the Cubs differently, be aggressive, throw strikes, make them hit the ball. They're not putting them on base like they were. They're not letting them off easy. They're making them have to swing the bat, take the bat off their shoulders, swing it, and get hits to drive in runs. And the Cubs just aren't capitalizing on that. So it's kind of an ebb and flow. It's a 162-game season. You have to figure that you're going to do something that doing it well. Teams are going to watch film and study you, play against you, and see how they can change their approach to be better against you. And the formula for the way the Cubs started has been figured out, and the Cubs are going to have to evolve and show that they can hit the ball when they put it in the strike zone. Whether that be home runs, whether that be singles, it doesn't matter. The Cubs need to start hitting the baseball. And we shall see. I mean, the tough thing about this is they don't have a respite. They go right on, and I believe they play the Mets next. Is that correct? Maybe they play one more series and then the Mets. Sorry, I don't have the schedule right in front of me. But they've got the Mets coming up soon, and they've got like another 18 games left in 18 days. So they don't really have a break to catch up, and they've got some guys with injuries. They're going to have to figure this out on the fly, how to get back and win. And hopefully, we shall see. But I'm sorry. I remember they play 3 against the Reds, then they play the Mets. So they've got a winnable series against the Mets, and they've got Arrieta on the mound tomorrow. So hopefully they can get back on their winning ways by coming in there, just shutting the door with Arrieta, winning that first game of the series, and setting it up for hopefully a sweep to start building this lead back up. On the other side of town, though, is you have the White Sox. And we'll talk a little bit more about their draft picks, because they actually had one pick in each of the first 3 rounds. And the Cubs, un-Cubs-like, none of those top draft picks that I talked about are signed at all. They're still unsigned for the Cubs. The White Sox, they've signed their first 3 draft picks. And that's Zach Collins, catcher, Zach Birdie, pitcher, and Alec Hansen, pitcher. We'll just talk about the first one, because second round, third round, the likelihood that they make it to the majors is pretty slim. Now, Zach Collins is a guy they liken to Kyle Schwarber. He's just a big power lumber bat in the middle of the lineup. He possibly, if you look at the draft as a whole, he might have the most pop out of any of the players in this year's draft. Great plate discipline, but he's not a very good catcher. His defensive ability is not so good, and he does strike out too many times. But he sounds a lot like a Kyle Schwarber, and if the White Sox can develop him quickly and put him into the roster to play catcher, even if you lose some defensive prowess, to be able to have a bat like that in the lineup is going to be a big boost for them. And that, like it was for the Cubs last year, bringing up Kyle Schwarber brought that team to a big boost that propelled them to that run in the second half that led to them making the playoffs and ultimately to the National League Championship Series. Who's to say that won't happen with Zach Collins and the Chicago White Sox? When we last talked about the White Sox last week, they were reeling, absolutely just reeling. And I said the schedule makers didn't really do them any favors. They had a 4-game set against the Boston Red Sox, who, as of last week, were the highest scoring team in the league, followed up by a 3-game series against the Toronto Blue Jays. That's that was a tough order because the Toronto Blue Jays are a tough team. They're right in the thick of things for a wild card spot, even for a division win. And same thing with Boston. Both teams very good. The White Sox reeling. And you have the White Sox come in, take 3 out of 4 from Boston and 2 out of 3 from Toronto, and really get themselves back in the thick of things. I mean, this is a tough division right now, other than Minnesota, who's 20 and a half games out of first place right now. Is Detroit, Chicago, and Kansas City are all clumped right together for second place in the division. Cleveland is actually playing lights out baseball right now. They're on a 9-game winning streak, winning 9 out of their last 10, and starting to run away with the division a little bit. But the White Sox are just playing really well. On Monday, 3-1 win against Boston, led by Abreu starting to turn his bat back on. Goes 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs. Miguel Gonzalez gives you a great start. 6 2/3, only 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. That's the kind of start you need, especially when you got to consider how good that is, being the 5th starter in a rotation that only had 4 starters this season. And you go in there and you basically shut down the highest scoring team in the league. Tuesday, they come in there with another 3-1 win against Boston, this time behind Chris Sale, who we talked about last week, just absolute coming back down to earth and losing a lot of his stuff and what's going on with Chris Sale, and he shuts us all up. Goes 7 innings strong, 4 hit baseball, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts against the highest scoring team in the league. And then you had Tim Anderson coming in 2 for 4 with an RBI and his first career home run to help you win the game. Wednesday, you get another win, 8-6 against Boston behind Melky Cabrera. Home run, 4 for 5, 4 RBIs. Todd Frazier, home run with 2 runs driven in. But the scary part about that one is you had an abysmal start by Quintana, who's been your most steady starter this year. Goes 5 1/3, 6 earned runs, 6 walks for 1 strikeout, and a home run. I mean, the guy's not throwing strikes. That's a huge problem. That's part of what he does. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. And then you lose Thursday to Boston, which you went for the sweep, and you lost 8-7. But you get another good productive night from Jose Abreu, 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. It's the James Shields. You got your best start of the season for you out of 4 starts from James Shields. 5 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. Much improved over his last several games. But it was this White Sox bullpen that didn't come through. Albers gave up a run. Beck gave up a run. Jones gave up a run. Perk gave up a run. The bullpen just collapsed again. Friday, 3-2 win against Toronto with a late home run by Melky Cabrera. Rodon goes 5 2/3 with 2 runs, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. And then Saturday, you get a loss 10-8 from Toronto. Another rocky start from Miguel Gonzalez. Goes 5 1/3 with 8 earned runs. And the White Sox get basically mowed down for the most part by R.A. Dickey. The only guy that was hitting him was Laurie, who hit his 7th home run. I'm sorry, he was 7th in the order. So you're not going to get a lot of protection there, not a lot of guys on base. But he goes 3 for 4, 3 RBIs, and 2 home runs. Now for the White Sox, you're starting to play back to where you were. But the scary thing is that statistically, they're not consistent. Hitting-wise, you still have a bunch of guys that aren't having high batting averages. I mean, Tim Anderson, who's the guy that was supposed to come in and be a spark for you, right now he's hitting .261 with a .710 OPS. It's not that good. It's not that good. Not bad, but it's not good. You have, I don't even think, has Frazier broken 200 as far as his batting average goes? Melky Cabrera is your best hitter, but he's really inconsistent. Jose Abreu up and down, up and down. And your pitching staff, you can't even count on Chris Sale and Quintana to be consistent starters. You don't know what you're going to get week in and week out with them, let alone James Shields, who 3 abysmal starts for you and then has a decent start. Rodon, you don't know what you're going to get out of him night in, night out. And same thing with Miguel Gonzalez. You have one game, he goes in there and shuts out Boston. And then his next game comes in and just gets hammered by Toronto. This team has enough talent to be able to make the playoffs. They really do. It's just going to be coming through regularly and getting regular contribution from everybody and be able to count on people. That's really what you're looking for, and that's coming from the manager spot. I don't care if they're on a hot streak. Is Robin is not representing this team well and not doing the things he needs to do. I'm sorry that people, if you love Robin, I don't think he's a bad guy. I liked him as a White Sox player, but as a manager, he just doesn't have the experience to be able to do this. And quickly looking at the wild card standings, is right now Boston and Toronto, the 2 teams that you just beat, are the wild card leads, and you, the White Sox, you're 2.5 games out of the wild card, and you're behind Houston, who's starting to turn it on a little bit, Kansas City, who you need to learn how to beat in your division, and Toronto and Boston, who you just smacked the crap out of. And now you've got 3 games in a row against the lowly Minnesota Twins. Got 3 games in a row against the Twins, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then you get 3 against the Astros in the first, second, and third. Now that's going to be where that's a team that's just in front of you as far as the wild card standing. You're playing them, and you should be able to turn that on, hopefully beat them, and really position yourself back in the wild card picture. The White Sox have the talent to do it. This realistically could be a Cubs Sox World Series. And I don't care that the White Sox went on that awful streak, is because they went on an awfully good streak to start the season. They just need to figure out how to bring consistency and get consistent pitching performances night in, night out. It makes it a lot harder if you're a hitter it's a lot easier to hit if you're up 4-0 than if you're down 4-0. I can tell you that as a fact. Is when you're down, you're pressing. You're trying to hit home runs. You're trying to go above and beyond. When you're up 4-0, you're much more relaxed because you're like, we have the lead. We're pitching well. Let me just go up there and swing the bat and see what happens. And that's when good things happen. When you're relaxed, you just play within what you're trying to do. So it starts with the White Sox pitching. They need to have consistent starting pitching performances to allow their hitters to go out there and be more comfortable at the plate. And that's where it goes. So hopefully the White Sox can keep up on this streak and take out the Twins and the Astros. Go from there. And so that really is going to wrap up with what I have to talk about. No Bears talk this week. And sorry this was a little long-winded, but I promised you guys I would talk about draft picks. And it just happened to be this month, 4 out of the 5 teams in Chicago had their draft. The Blackhawks, the Bulls, the White Sox, and the Cubs, all in June. So I had a lot to talk about with that. And thank you guys so much for listening. Please share this with your friends. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down